Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Know Thy User. Know Thy User is a podcast by Rival Mind where we talk about all things digital marketing. So I'm Matt. This also is Matt. We are web strategists, but I would say that Matt is more than a web strategist. He is also the director of our web development department. And so what we're talking about in this episode is how long does it take to create a website, to build a website?
What a question. Don't we get that one all the time?
I think I answer that question at minimum once a week. But sometimes every single day, depending on who we're talking to and new clients and that type of thing. So we thought we would address it here, lay it out simply for you so that you could have an understanding of each section of building a website. How long do those take? What causes a delay in building a website? You know, typically we say what we call a brochure website will take roughly 3 months. That's a company website. That's not e-commerce. That's not something that's more sophisticated or dynamic, but roughly 3 months. So if that's the case, Matt McGinnis, Director of Web Development, explain to me what it takes to do a project in 3 months and what are those sections, what might cause a delay.
Sure. You're right. We get this question a lot. And so in an ideal world, let's go ideal first. Like that 2 to 3 month target is what we're shooting for. What can derail and what most often derails a project is the communication between client and the Rival Mind process. So the breakdown can happen right out of the gate. So typically, even in sales prospecting meetings, like I'll be in a meeting and you'll bring me in and we'll talk about this question, and my motivation in those conversations is most often to communicate to a client that really it's going to come down to how can we get information exchanged back and forth in a nice, clear, concise, and consistent manner. That's really what will afford us the opportunity to be able to put something together rather quickly. Okay,
so let's go into a project and talk about each one of those sections of a project. You know, we affectionately name them, you know, with the same alliteration.
The D's, D's.
Right. So let's talk about the D's and how long do those take typically, and what might derail one of those and make that project go longer.
All right. So my D's are define, design, develop, and deploy. And those are the main milestones or the main phases. Inside of those, obviously, our system is, you know, elaborating on different things. But in define, we are doing just that. We're defining the project. We're having discovery with a client. And so typically, questionnaire first. We'll send a questionnaire to the client, get some rudimentary information that will prepare us to be able to have a great discovery meeting where we're getting the client to talk to us about who they are, what they do, and why it matters. Then we'll move into design, where the phases are kind of style tile, wireframe, and design itself. So a style tile is a collection of elements that are aesthetic elements, typography, color range or swatch, iconography, hover states, like all of these things that are the look and feel of your website. We call it the skin of the website. So as opposed to wireframes are grayscale. They are mechanical. The purpose behind them is understanding what our section's going to look like and how do they lay out with image and text. And
one of the ways that you put it oftentimes is they're like blueprints. Building a house, you get to see the blueprints of the house being built before you pick out, you know, other things like potentially adding the paint colors and those types of things.
That's exactly right. So, you know, we know that the sink is going to go here. We don't necessarily know what color the faucet's going to be or anything like that, but that's a great analogy. So style tiles, we also, you know, skin, wireframes we'll also call the bones. So skin and bones equals design. So design is the fully fleshed out. Now we have the mechanical understanding where all of the sections are going to lay out, and we do a lot in our discovery phase of information architecture, which is an entirely different podcast that we have that we can do.
I have a feeling you're going to go now into how long it takes to develop.
Sure.
So let's take one step back.
Sure.
We had discovery.
Yeah.
How long does that typically take?
So again, depending on how fast can we communicate with a client, a couple of weeks, getting them onboarded, getting the questionnaire out and filled out and then received, and then having an internal success meeting that then leads to scheduling a discovery meeting, and then actually executing the discovery meeting, a couple of weeks.
Okay. So you said a couple of weeks. That's 2 weeks. We're 2 weeks into the project.
Yep.
Now we go into the style tiles, the wireframing, and the design. How long does that take?
In an ideal world, it'll take about a week. So designers will work on creating a style tile, putting that together. It will then take some education for the client most often. Mm-hmm. We do this all day, every day. So we talk in terms, but really part of the process is educating a client on understanding what is it that we're looking at here? What are we doing? So getting this style tile produced by the design team, then coordinating a meeting where we're educating the client so they can give us the proper feedback, about a week for that. Same for wireframes. So that puts us about 4 weeks in for end of wireframes.
Okay, so we're about a month in, and next is one of your D's will be development.
Correct.
So to talk about development, how long that takes?
So development, again, style tile plus wireframe, design. We have an approved design. Then creating it is a couple of weeks of, depending on site size, how many pages, are there any other complexities that we're adding to it, some sort of particular widget that we need to build or something like that will make it so that it can expand that time a little bit. But in just basic company brochure website, again, a 2 to 3 week turnaround in development is what we're shooting for. Okay,
so we've just developed the site, but it hasn't launched yet. So what's that final phase, and how long does that take?
So final phase is a lot of things. Like most projects, things are coming together. So bringing in the content, written content or imagery, applying that to now the fully fleshed out design, and then once you have all of those elements in the website, it starts to push the design around. So you're making space for, we had 3 more paragraphs about this particular subject in this section, so how do we make that look right? So we're leaning into a part of the process we call QA, or quality assurance. And in that phase, we're doing a lot of interactivity with the client. At that point, they have seen what the design looks like, so they're getting familiar with what is my website going to end up being as a finished product, and then being able to give input on how this should end up laying out and how it really comes together. So once we've kind of moved through all of that, and then do things like link checking and all of the mechanicals, then there is the element of
deploy. Yeah, we got to the finish line.
So as we're getting ready for deploy, we did sneak in our optimize for SEO. That disrupted my D's, but
so it's DDDOD.
That's right. But so as an agency that has 2 core competencies, one being SEO, one being website design, we're totally intentional in the way that we're setting these websites up. So part of that is introducing what we know about search marketing into our development of these websites. So in that QA phase, we're doing a lot of that, white glove care to make sure that any SEO assets that a client has from a previous website, we're transferring that. We're protecting URLs. We're any blogs that we know are getting good traffic, we're making sure that those are transferred over with the proper images that have the same alt text in them. So there's a lot of elements that we're caring for in that part of the process to make sure that once we launch the new site, Google has the best shot at continuing to give them the SEO value that they already had on
and then upon launch, the ongoing SEO starts, which is very important. So Matt, let's land this plane.
Okay.
Our 4 Ds and our O.
Yeah.
We have we start with
define,
roughly 2 weeks.
Yep.
Then design. Roughly, from what I was listening to, roughly 3 weeks.
Yep.
Then we have develop. Develop is roughly a month.
Yeah, depending on the complexity and size and how many page build outs there are. Yes.
Okay. Then we throw in the O, optimize, but that's kind of happening in tandem.
Yep.
With the development and even in the strategy phase at the beginning, and then we deploy the website.
Yep.
Which deploy is typically more like a week or so.
Yeah.
And so we round it out at about 2.5 to 3 months.
Yep. So if all of those are the gears in something working, then client communication is the oil in those gears.
Yeah.
As long as it's all going very smoothly, then all of our gears can mesh together in a great fashion. As soon as that communication goes away and we've stripped our gears of the oil, then there's a lot of grinding that happens in the middle of a project.
Okay, so we say roughly 3 months, but can it be shorter?
It sure can. Highly motivated clients tend to be very responsive and are really engaged in what's the process and how is it going. So responding to emails and sending all of the things that need to happen in order to make a website come to life.
Yep.
That can totally accelerate the process as well.
All right, great. Well, I think we have exhausted how long it takes to build a website. I hope that was helpful. Until next time, thank you for joining us.